When someone mentions online learning, we typically think of the pandemic years, when students were participating in classrooms much the same way that their parents were spending their days in Zoom meetings. In fact, that's only one part of the game-changing advancements that are taking place as traditional education meets 21st century tech solutions. Today, new use cases are being developed that make education more immersive and more accessible to students, regardless of where they're located. And it's making it possible for people of all ages and circumstances to better themselves, thus helping to provide a solid path for poor nations to develop better educated populations, as well as supporting people in advanced nations to boost their skill sets and move up in their careers. The key is the fast-growing field called EdTech, and today's guest is going to give us a window on what's actually happening around the world. I'm Jane Singer, and thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table. Today we're honored to have Atul Tamirnekar, Executive Chairman of Singapore-based Global Schools Foundation, join us. Global Schools Foundation, or GFS, is a not-for-profit institution with 23 campuses of multicultural environments. In this episode, Atul will be talking about how EdTech is changing the educational landscape in both developing and emerging nations. His experience helping to shape India's education policy, how AI, data analytics, and machine learning can empower teachers and enhance the classroom experience for students, and the world-changing benefits of being able to provide people without financial means access to education. Education also plays a key role in providing nations and organizations with both leaders and skilled workers. And as most companies are finding these days, it's not always easy to find the right talent in the right place. In fact, many are struggling to fill positions in certain markets. That's why top corporations and even smaller enterprises rely on AsiaNet consultants to help them fill key positions. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. So if you need to recruit new talent, or you think you might be doing so soon, head on over to their website. That's asianetconsultants.com. asianetconsultants.com. Now let's find out from Atul how technology is helping to spread education far and wide. Atul, I am so happy to invite you on A Seat at the Table. I think what you're talking about is so interesting and such a relevant topic. We have seen such massive changes in formal education, and a lot of that's been accelerated by the pandemic because of all the remote learning that we needed to do where we didn't have a choice. What do you see as some of the most significant shifts that are taking place in education?
Well, thank you, Jane, for having me. And it's a pleasure to be talking to you across time zones. We feel that in terms of education, I think first and foremost, every single organization which is related to education, be it preschool or a high school or a university or a tertiary learning, I think one thing that is by default has become a permanent fixture is a technology aspect.
Right.
And I think that something used to be like nice to have, but post-COVID, it's become a must-have for every organization, regardless of the size of your scale or the number of students you handle or whatever be it. Because I think another thing that has really been able to connect and people are convinced about it is the fact that the more technology used in a very carefully balanced way, is actually going to add to a better learning environment. And so that's really been a proof of the pudding by the way COVID brought us in the way of technology. And I'm sure that many organizations feel the same way, that this is now a beginning of a new chapter for us in education and perhaps a much better way of educating our students across the various age groups. Now, I can go into some very specific things, like you have the virtual classrooms,
Right.
which used to be again very rarely used, once in a time, so schools may actually just connect to each other. Virtual meetings used to be so less often used even in a corporate situation. And only the ones which were very few meetings used to be done. So now we see virtual classrooms becoming almost like in our schools, it's become a virtual fixture for us, whereby at the drop of a hat, a teacher may decide to have certain classes which had to be done additionally or to be done for students who are not in a particular physical location. And so virtual classrooms have become a norm. We have virtual classes going on from academic lessons to activities to music and dance to even competitions across the various time zones. So virtual classrooms have become a really, really de facto for everyone. So have been the hybrid classrooms. And I must say the difference between a hybrid classroom and a virtual classroom is the fact that a hybrid classroom, you may have students actually face-to-face sitting in the classroom, and yet you will have some students joining you virtually. So hybrid classrooms have become also a sort of preference, particularly not as heavily used during the COVID, but more so in order for us to deliver a new and a better experience to our students. So hybrid classrooms are coming on. Ebooks, various apps, where the text content of a print context has actually gone into a digital format. And on our side, what we have done is we've seen a huge amount of content actually getting translated into digital content way before the COVID happened. So in a way, it was blessing in disguise that our teachers had all the content digitally in a secure and safe way, and it was distributed to students and used in the classrooms during the virtual and the hybrid lessons. Interactive learning is also picking up at every age group. It's more, I would say, pervasive during the early years, grade, let's say age 5 to age 10. That's where they really pick up a lot of things by way of, doing interactive sessions in the classroom, by using either tablets or using touchscreens in the classroom. And experiential learning has become much more easier. Many schools used to use projectors, and now televisions have become a norm. Every classrooms have televisions. So the experiential learning is something that you can very quickly show it on the screen, ask students to go get experience on that, do certain live sessions, do certain life skill sessions. And that is the way I think experiential learning also has kind of got up. Podcasts, webinars, we all see even some recorded lessons, because sometimes you want to really do some very high impact recordings, which are going to be transmitted to, let's say, hundreds and maybe even 500 students at a time. And we do that very often because then you want to make sure the time is minimized, the impact of that particular conversation is amplified. And so therefore, sometimes we even use recording lessons. Coming to convenience point of view, that's my last point, is that basically it's like 24/7, available at all locations. It's the convenience of, as good as signing legal forms today by way of DocuSign or PandaDoc. It's the same convenience that is coming in education. So I think these are some very interesting value-added, I would say, activities which are embracing our education now.
I think it's really interesting to talk about some of the different changes that have come through to a great extent because of technology. Now, before we dive into that further, can you tell us a little bit about Global Schools Foundation so that we understand what exactly you're doing and how this is different from other academic institutions?
So let me put it this way. The Global Schools Foundation, the very idea about it and the very name that presents it, is a not-for-profit initiative that we have initiated for communities worldwide, where communities can actually benefit from a very, very high quality education that matches their budgets and purses, and they are able to get access to that type of education, which normally would be either available at very expensive schools, or for that matter, it is available in some other countries and not in their place of residence. So what we have done is essentially the idea was to really bring about these high impact, very, very, I would say, positive learning environments into different markets, into different communities. And that was a basic idea. And of course, now it has grown into a worldwide footprint across the 2 decades. Just 2 days back, we celebrated our 20th year, completion of 20th year. And it was so...
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. These are moments that, when we bring back memories, I think there are countless memories, and actually they make us proud more than anything else about the fact that we have done so many changes, so many upliftment of human beings and taken them from one journey to the other journey. So that's very wonderful. We have to adapt to things which are very, very new age in nature, you can say new normals. And These could include, the digital and technological innovations that are required to be brought into education because they allow a better learning environment. And we genuinely believe, and actually, I can tell you, a way of using certain simple technologies that we built, like the data analytics, we've actually seen the progress and the learning improvements in a child have gone up dramatically. I mean, one benchmark has told us that students who come to our schools and with the aid of technology, we have seen a 25% improvement in their learning outcomes, which is phenomenal. A quarter is a major, major improvement with the same set of publications, same set of textbooks, same set of worksheets that you have, and same set of pedagogy that you can apply. But it's the right combination of technology that makes it very important for the learning to be optimized. So when we talk about technology, we're really looking at technology and digital platforms that optimize the learning, and they make it very personalized in nature. And that's really a big, big benefit that we have.
Oftentimes we look at this remote learning, and I mean, remote learning has been around for a very long time. They used to have classes on television, right? Long before we had the internet, that enabled people who were not anywhere near a school, or perhaps in some cases couldn't afford school, to be able to learn various things. So when you look at what you're doing, is your focus more on being able to bring education to people who either are not near schools or can't afford schools, or is it more on trying to use new technologies in different ways to enhance the learning experience?
Right. So I think, Jane, the way we look at it is there are three parts to it, and actually you summarized it very well. The first segment of students are the ones who want it for the comfort of their learning and who want a virtual education, for example, for the fact that they may be multitasking many events. So you could have a student who's actually a school basketball player, is sitting outside in some basketball courts and has 2 hours of time to actually join the lessons. So that's one way of looking at it. It's basically taking it to their doorsteps. And the fact that everything is now in a mobile format is much more easier for us to deliver. The second is the students who are basically looking at it as a virtual education. And we saw during the pandemic, it kind of went through the roof. Unlimited number of people benefited from the virtual education, but it's coming back to the basics of having a face-to-face education. They want the social skills.
Right.
They want students to be able to meet their friends, to be able to learn from them. And I think I was just this morning in a meeting with some people, and these are young lawyers, and they're telling us, even though we have to work from home for 2 days or 3 days a week, actually we don't like working from home. We want to come back to office.
Right.
The same way, students want to come back to schools. And so there has been a decline in the access to virtual education, or rather a demand for it.
Right.
And then there are certain products and services which are delivered across the geographies. I think they continue to be as it is. I know of companies and organizations which are delivering British education, for example, on a virtual school. And it's being delivered across Africa, it's being delivered across various countries in the Middle East and soon to be in Asia. And they are basically creating a product which did not exist before, getting access to, at a fraction of a cost, a British education or a Cambridge education. It's like a completely new paradigm in itself. So we feel that all these things are emerging in their own ways, in their own gradual spirit. And sooner or later, they will get into new territories. And these are all complementing what we used to do in face-to-face in schools.
Right. I think it's very interesting to see how this has evolved. And I think you make a very important point that while remote education is certainly very valuable in the fact that it saves people the time, when they do have a choice between remote or in-person, the in-person has a lot in terms of the social interaction. Some of what we see coming through in EdTech are a way to provide sort of micro or short classes to keep people up to speed on things. So in other words, more on continuing education for people who may already have a proficiency but want to enhance. Do you see that coming through?
Absolutely. That's happening in many geographies in many countries. Because you see, what happens is during I would say the 40 hours a week the child is in the school, they're always curious about, what else can I do? What other activities can I do which are not available to me in schools? And we started a music academy, for example, just before COVID. And the music academy now has become an additional sort of activity and a very prestigious activity where we bring in professionals from the industry who actually make music for the movies. I mean, that is the level of performance. And now they are doing the virtual schools about how do you learn music, how do you impart music. And they have students who are being nurtured into sort of professional young youth people who are going to be looking at music as a profession. So we feel that these are new value-added micro programs, micro certifications. There could be things on leadership. There could be things on how do you bring in sustainability in your life. There could be things on many other aspects of what is generally not available. Or if you, even if it's in a school, but you may not have the critical mass to attract it. So I find many of these websites actually pull in, bring in a huge critical mass so that you've got more people to relate to, you've got more people to speak to. And that way, these are complementary and certainly value-adding activities, which the parents are very welcoming.
I think that's really important because now you're using it to build additional engagement as opposed to simply instead of in-person classes. And again, when in-person classes are possible. Now, when you look at, as you might call it, or virtual learning, how do you see this changing the landscape in Korea, Japan, Singapore, throughout Asia, Middle East? Tell me what you see happening there.
So every country has a different priority as far as technology is concerned. And bigger the countries, the more value add they see using technology. For example, in Singapore, the government of Singapore has made commitments to spend about $4 billion on continuous education. Now, although the amount is very big, but I think it's very important that the government is looking at it from a very practical perspective.
Right.
So when the COVID happened, they actually came up with a program to train mid-career people. So for example, they reached us out and they said, would you like to take people from not from education sector? And can you give them a 9 months training program or a 1 year program? And the government said, we will pay for their salaries and you can provide the training to them as a teacher or an assistant teacher. And then thereafter, they are free to continue to work with you or they can continue to work with other education. So they found a very unique way of bringing in continuous education to people to whom it matters or it relates to very well. And so people make a choice and I want to get into it. And the government says, look, if you are interested in it, I'm willing to fund you your experiential learning with some existing organization. And that is what they did. And I think billions of dollars were spent during COVID, particularly in this, what they call it, the resilience program. Now, coming to Japan, I think the empowerment of women and diversity is also kind of having a big say in the scheme of things in Japan. We've also seen a lot of huge number of female university students. So actually the female proportion has been going up in the universities on the student side as well as on the faculty side, which is kind of very encouraging. In terms of South Korea, I can say that the government, which has a very clear priority that the national education should be picked up by every single South Korean citizen, yet it is mindful of the fact about aspirations of the people who want to go for British education or IB or American education. So they're kind of making small windows of opportunities for these students to actually be able to attend these international schools. So I think there are pretty much a lot of things happening. Malaysia has been giving huge amount of technology distributing to students, such as they gave out tablets during the COVID years. Malaysia has been making its own strides to make sure that the current young generation is able to catch up.
Right.
Let's go to India. India is, as you know, is a 1.2 billion people population. And India has worked on something very smart, very trendy, and very, I would say, forward-looking. They created a program called National Education Policy 2020. And this was done in consultation with the various states and the education infrastructure in the country. And then they came up with a summary of things that they want to provide. And in terms of frameworks that they're looking at. So they modified the whole frameworks, which is generally like 10 plus 2 plus 3, which is like the plus 3 is the undergraduate or whatever. And now they have created a new framework, where it is going to essentially make the development outcomes much more clearer for all the federal governments as well as the state governments. So India has been using this NEP framework to promote a global attitude, to promote a local flavor of its culture and languages, and integrating them with the education. And of course, they're trying to make sure that India preserves its culture. India is able to, the young are appreciating the various aspects of their national identities. At the same time, they are becoming a global workforce to contribute to other economies. And of course, the last I would cover is Saudi Arabia, for example, under His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman Abdulaziz, the Crown Prince and Deputy Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia. They are embarking on a one-of-a-kind mission in the world to basically transform the entire kingdom of Saudi Arabia by 2030. And they are planning to put up they're planning to put a milestone and a map to reaching a first world country over the next 2 decades. And I think one of the things they've identified among many other things, such as non-oil GDP, adding many other things to the industry sector, education, they feel, is the ultimate driver of these programs. Because if education is not driven in a proper way, and they do not have more options than the local national curriculum, the chances are that the youth that is coming into the industry may not be fully updated in terms of what international companies would want to come into Saudi Arabia. So it's like every country has its own scheme of things, priorities, and we are beginning to see many of these changes now.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
I think that's really interesting to see how different countries have looked at the same technology and found different ways to use it to bring their country forward, to help their citizens level up in terms of education, to become more globalized in some respects, or to gain more critical skills, so to speak, so that they can better compete in a changing workforce environment. So I think that's really fascinating. Now, when we talk about the technology, part of it, of course, is the ability to deliver courses remotely and allow students to interact online through Zoom as opposed to simply just watching it on a televised classroom situation. How do you see things like AI, data analytics, machine learning, etc.? What role do you see that playing in terms of empowering students, but also perhaps enhancing the classroom experience for students?
So, these are unavoidable. I mean, AI, ML, and data analytics, I would say are now, along with the flow of the technology, you're beginning to see data analytics also coming in a big way. Because the fact that you have the technology and the data insights, you are able to see patterns, you're able to see much better insights, you're able to cross-link those insights into the student performance. So while on the academic side, we've already had data analytics for many years, and which is kind of helping the teachers and the students to be able to more specifically zoom in on areas which are likely to need more improvements, and at the same time, make the things better which are already performing well. But now we're beginning to see the non-academic aspects of behavior, personality. The data analytics is kind of seeping into that area as well, and we are beginning to put those data analytics into action so that teachers and students would be able to get a lot more insights about their behavior, about their personality, about their values, which are non-academic in nature, but it's pretty much what parents will be looking for. And these will help the students, get into much better areas. Parents, they get very precise interventions or suggestions for student growth. And the schools are the best places where we give them this kind of a head start in understanding an AI technology. So for example, while we use it ourselves, we would want students to actually be able to learn about AI, So there are different programs in the school, and they are able to undergo different tutorials, different micro certifications. And the fact that AI is going to become slowly a great 24 by 7 learning platform. Because when you combine AI with your learning technologies, you are essentially going to build over a period of years huge amount of data, which can become something like an auto chat bot, which can allow students to be able to search and dig for information and kind of get the right information at the right place. So this would be helping us in a big way to kind of get AI to deliver a much more, I would say, curated and a much more neater and cleaner education and learning journeys to our students.
So in a sense, you're able to use it to personalize that learning experience to some extent for the students, and also to be able to better monitor their progress. Is that true?
That's correct. So one is the access to information, which the students will be able to get much quicker with the use of AI. The personalized learning systems can become much more meaningful when you have a combination of data analytics, AI, and machine learning to some extent. So that what happens is, in a personalized learning journey, it is these things will actually start popping up to the student or the teacher and say, would you like to do something here? Because maybe this is an area that you would like to work on. Maybe there is a particular unit or a module within a particular physics subject, which you should be actually doing something more, because there has been a trend line that your performance in that particular module has not been very good. Or maybe there has been a sort of a prior history of other students not being able to perform very good in that particular module or unit. So personalized learning definitely becomes much more easier to deliver, much more easier to construct based on the student outcomes, based on the data analytics that's available. And I think this will help every child to kind of focus on the goals and the abilities they want to achieve through the personalized programs. I think we definitely see AI being able to help bring down the silos between different schools, between different communities, and increase the collaboration across, say, boundaries for better understanding of various cultures, languages, sensitivities of each nationality and the environment.
I think that's really interesting, and I think it really ties in with so much that's happening in the world, even outside of education, and the importance of being able to create this expanded learning platform for people and to be able to break down those barriers. Now, in your opinion, what are the big trends we should be watching for in the education sector? I mean, you've spoken about, of course, the advancements in technology, but are there other things that you see coming that maybe aren't here yet, but that you have your eye on?
Yeah. So, for example, blended learning. Of course, some people call it hybrid learning, right, or blended learning. That's emerging. Gamification of content is actually getting better, because gamification used to be a very expensive, cost resource driven activity, but gamification with the age of new technologies is actually becoming easier. And any gamification, we do use gamification in our learning journeys of students, it is kind of picking up, because we find the students' attention span to a gamification exercise is far greater than a teacher kind of giving a passive lecture, and the students are kind of thinking about how to pick up those points. So gamification has that magic element of getting students to learn it faster. Of course, mobiles are becoming pretty much, it's a common already across the world. And the other thing we find in terms of learning journeys and the trends, universities, which are the next stop for the students, actually now paying more attention to the area of soft skills, to the students, so that the critical thinking, problem solving, people management, how they perform in group dynamics, and innovation and creativity, they want to see an evidence of these things. So as you speak more to the admission directors and the various universities, they want students to actually have that experiential learning in these areas, critical thinking, problem solving. And we do a lot to actually promote these through various activities. Employers, for example, they want to see the ability of these professionals when they enter the industry to demonstrate that they are able to make tough decisions, It's not like, oh, what do I do now? I have this situation. Where do I go? So we start teaching them how to solve problems from age 5, rather age 10, from grade 5 onwards. And students now also have challenges, right? With the expansion of social media technologies, which are really, taking over their personal lives. So they're also kind of facing a decreasing attention span due to these penetrative technologies. So these are some of the things that we see very clearly are emerging. Yeah.
Wow, that's so exciting. And I think that it is interesting to see how education has expanded beyond simply something for students in a classroom during those years when you would be a student, and been able to reach out to people really across all demographics, whether they're still students, not students, working or not working, so that everybody has an opportunity to learn and to enjoy the process of learning. So I think, some of the developments that you're working on and that you're bringing forward through your program are really very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we begin to think that it's better to ride on the post-COVID era to be able to really tap on some of these great initiatives, really make sure that the students are able to, so-called the lost generation, is able to really accelerate to the next couple of years so that they can really catch up and they can really get more for the bang for the bucks that they're spending in various schools and colleges. And I think this is a way we believe that students are really going to benefit. And the new generations will continue to benefit from the emergence of more of these new initiatives and trends in education.
Wow, so exciting. Well, Atul, you've shared so many interesting things with us. How can people connect with you?
Well, I'm available on various social platforms.
Okay.
I'm available on LinkedIn. I think that's the only platform I use generally to share information with my professional colleagues.
Okay.
So definitely they can reach out to me.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, I'm going to include that link in the show notes so people will be able to find you. I think a lot of people would want to reach out to you and be able to ask you questions directly. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on A Seat at the Table. I've learned a tremendous amount from you.
Thank you so much, Jane. And it's a pleasure for me to also chat with you. And I'm really amazed at the depth in which you have been able to address these topics. And it's really doing justice to all the young and emerging young population that they will find this very useful. And we wish you best of luck for the rest of the program. And let's be in touch again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, AsiaNet Consultants. AsiaNet's a specialist in recruiting top talent in Asian markets. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. Learn about how they can help you find the best talent by heading over to their website, asianetconsultants.com. That's asianetconsultants.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something from it, I would love to hear about it. If you'd like to support the show, please hit the subscribe button. And if you can take a minute to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or other channels, that would be fabulous. Don't forget to check out our podcast website, seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. If there's something you'd like to share, ideas, suggestions, or comments, please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me and being part of our international community. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.